2012, one man tried to answer a simple question: why isn't jiu-jitsu a mainstream sport? He set out to create the first highly produced, star-studded professional grappling show in the world. With some of the biggest names in jiu-jitsu competing, you'd think an event like this would be a huge success, but you'd be wrong. 5 years, 8 events, a potentially hacked Instagram account, and a whirlwind of poor financial decisions would turn Metamoris from the future of grappling into a cautionary tale. To start, we have to look at the man at the center of this story, Rallick Gracie, the son of Rorion Gracie, grandson to Helio Gracie, and nephew to legends like Royler, Royce, and Rickson Gracie. His brothers Hiron and Henner run the Gracie Academy in Torrance, California. Needless to say, Rallick has quite the established jiu-jitsu pedigree. Rallick's goal was to create a stage for jiu-jitsu that matched that of the UFC or boxing. He figured if these combat sports could sell out arenas and draw thousands of spectators, why couldn't jiu-jitsu? The problem seemed to be A, jiu-jitsu matches had no hype behind them. There was no Dana White out there generating interest in grappling matches. And B, jiu-jitsu matches have a complex point scoring system, and it isn't as enjoyable to watch. The plan was to solve both these problems at once. Rallick ditched the point system and time limits and instead opted for one 20-minute round. Instead of points and advantages, matches would be decided by submission only. If after 20 minutes there was no submission, there was no winner and the match was a draw. As to the hype problem, there was a simple fix. Before each match, there would be intro packages to educate the fans about the competitors and to build tension in the match. They didn't have to spend a ton of time educating the viewer on the rules since they were so straightforward. Instead, they could use that time to build up the fighters and hype the match. The viewer then had more of a connection with the competitors. They were someone they could root for or against, not just a name on the screen. It sounds great, right? Well, yeah, it was. I loved it. The first Metamoris card had some of the top names in the game. Any of the matches could have been a main event at any grappling show, and Rallick essentially had 6 main events all in one card. The event was a huge success from a jiu-jitsu perspective, but rumors were swirling that Rallick and the investors in the event had overextended themselves. The roster was stacked, they produced a bunch of promotional footage, and they had rented out Viejas Arena at San Diego State University, a building with a capacity of 12,000 people. They also launched a brand new website to stream the event, and none of those things can be considered cheap. But like any business, Metamoris had startup costs, and I'd assume the plan was to recoup that investment as more and more events took place. But I also probably would not make this video right now if that actually happened. The second Metamoris didn't take place until June of the following year, but it featured more of the top grapplers in the world, and it was headlined by Kron Gracie and Shinya Aoki, with Kron tapping Aoki via guillotine. The story of the night, however, would be the infamous match between Brendan Schaub and Cyborg. And in that match, Schaub basically ran away from Cyborg for 20 minutes. But despite the Schaub and Cyborg weirdness, the event was still a success overall. It was fun to watch, but the rumors persisted that Rallick and company were still losing money, and Metamoris not releasing pay-per-view or streaming figures didn't help those rumors. If Rallick was really losing his investors' money, Metamoris 3 was his big swing to try and get it back. To set the stage, let's go back to 2003. We're at ADCC in Sao Paulo, and Royler Gracie is one of the best grapplers in the world. He's got a list of achievements that's too long to list. Eddie Bravo, at that time, he was just a brown belt that no one gave a chance to. And when Royler and Eddie stepped on the mat to compete, everyone thought Royler would just run through him. Eddie used some of his now famous 10th planet techniques, and he eventually tapped Royler with a triangle. He didn't just beat Royler though, he beat him with techniques that were non-traditional, and that some even considered to be jiu-jitsu blasphemy. So if you fast forward back to 2013, some say Eddie got lucky back in Sao Paulo, and some say the best grappler won on the night. Now, Eddie and Royler both had competing far in their rear view, and what was perhaps the most desired rematch of all time, it seemed to be a pipe dream. Well, enter Metamoris, and Eddie vs. Royler 2 was announced, and we were finally going to get what we were waiting for. There was a lot of back and forth drama in the lead up to the fight, and I remember one argument was whether or not Eddie could wear gi pants, and if he could wear gi pants, would Royler be allowed to grab them? And it was small details like that had the match sort of in jeopardy a few times, and we didn't actually know whether it was going to happen or not. But that drama really just served as hype, and by the time the match arrived, people couldn't wait for it. The match was a barn burner from beginning to end, and it ended in a draw, but it was a great match, one of the best matches ever at Metamoris. And I remember watching the match live, and it looked like at one point that Eddie was about to destroy Hoyler's knee and basically just explode it. And Hoyler just had this calm expression on his face that basically said, no matter what happens, I'm not going to tap to this. It wasn't all good news though. The match was amazing, but Metamoris was still losing money. And it seemed like every time Halleck tried to ramp up the hype to do big numbers and save the business, he'd overextend. Now, I wasn't there behind the scenes, and I haven't seen the books, so I don't know how much he was spending and on what, but I'd imagine the increase in the production value and the cost associated with that production exponentially outpaced the increase in viewership. I mean, I'm not an accountant, but if you're spending 10 times what you did to produce this event versus the last one, and you don't get 10 times the viewers as the last one, you're gonna be losing money. And unfortunately, this is the part of the story where things really go sideways. So Halleck started saying some very strange things publicly that would give any PR rep nightmares. Like when he was asked why over the course of the first 3 events there was only one women's fight, Halleck said, "We're spinning a wheel. We have to keep the wheel moving. I just don't think there's women who are really going to bring it on that level." I mean, what an incredibly stupid thing to say. Forget about the bad PR, it's just not correct. And if you don't think that there's female grapplers out there who can headline a show, you can see me in the comments and I'll tell you why you're wrong. So now Halleck starts losing investors and starts making strange decisions for the events. Like he was announcing that there was going to be a secret match at Metamoris 4 and we wouldn't know who the competitors were. And he did that same gimmick again at Metamoris 5. And he added a heavyweight championship for the match between Josh Barnett and Hiram Gracie at Metamoris 6, despite there never being any other championship matches ever. And the whole production just started to lose that authentic feeling that the first few cards had. So most people would have cut their losses long ago, not plowed on with more and more events trying to recoup what they were continually losing. I mean, it was public knowledge at this point that Metamoris was never profitable, and Halleck would later confirm this. People weren't into it anymore, and unfortunately those who still were into it were getting double charged for their subscriptions, and then people who unsubscribed from the subscription service were still getting billed monthly. This actually happened to me. I got double charged once, and I guess I was in the group of lucky ones who, after I canceled, they stopped billing me right away. But that didn't happen for everyone. Some people just kept getting billed and billed and billed. In one final attempt to bring people in, Halleck announced the Metamoris Challengers series. He sent out an email announcing the launch of a series of local tournaments that would allow competitors to work their way up to the Metamoris stage in a broadcasted event with a cash prize to the winner. It sounds good in theory, but most of the local tournaments got canceled and they put on like a half-assed card and then they ended up not paying any of the competitors. So it really didn't work as the promotional tool that they were hoping for. And the thing about not paying people, well, that's about to come back and you're going to see a trend. This is where the hacked Instagram account comes in. AJ Agerzam, he competed for Halleck, and according to AJ, Halleck wanted AJ to do an Instagram takeover and run the Metamoris page as a promotion. And this is a pretty common tactic for companies to have a celebrity run their account for a day, and AJ made this an uncommon occurrence for sure. Instead of posting whatever he was supposed to post, AJ posted, "For quite some time you have been using my image, my likeness, and the likenesses of others to promote your business and the brand of Metamoris. You claim to represent the value that Jiu-Jitsu stands for, but you've been hiding behind empty promises. It has been over 6 months since my bout against Cairo Parisian, and I still haven't been paid." There will be a lot of the word allegedly coming up, but that's mainly because I don't want to get sued. Halleck alleges that AJ hacked into the account to post that and allegedly contacted the FBI about it. We know this because AJ shared the emails he received from Halleck about him holding the account hostage. Eventually the hostage situation was diffused, but not before Halleck commented on AJ's post, "You will get your money when it makes sense. Stop trying to make this all about you." On top of everyone already knowing about the Metamoris financial woes, they now knew that Halleck was not only keeping money from the fighters, he was also able to justify this to himself. When Metamoris 7 was announced, no one was actually sure the event would even happen. Fights were announced, but then the fighters would come out and say that they had specifically told Halleck not to use their names to promote the event. No fight that was originally announced on the card ultimately happened at the event. Somehow, Halleck convinced Gary Tonin to compete against him in the main event. Tonin had his issues with Halleck in the past and obviously didn't think much of the man's grappling abilities. And he may have been right, as he eventually knee-barred Halleck on the night. Most people who are regular Metamoris watchers skipped this event in protest of Halleck not paying his fighters. In another act of revenge, right before the event started, AJ announced on his Facebook page that he'd be streaming the show on his page and included the hashtag #PayTheFighters. His feed had thousands of viewers that obviously did not buy the Metamoris feed. Metamoris was essentially dead at this point. Halleck's own brothers Henan and Hiron distanced themselves from their brother. Allegedly, they said in a leaked email, Halleck has engaged in dishonest and fraudulent activity and continues to do so despite our repeated efforts to guide him. We've decided to terminate all business relations with Halleck and Metamoris. There was a Metamoris 8, but I barely even remember it happening. Doing research for this, all I could find out about Metamoris 8 was that there were only 2 matches, and one of them was Gordon Ryan, and he submitted Halleck, and Ryan says he was paid everything he was promised, but I don't know. Look at the video. It's not exactly the same level of stage production, is it? So what's happening now? Metamoris opened the door for other events to take its place, and it showed the way not to do it. Polaris had its first event in 2015 and is still going strong. Fight to Win and EBI are both successful promotions, and they're both on major streaming services. Pro grapplers are getting a stage on which to shine, and they're getting paid for it. Halleck said of his failed venture, "There's no doubt that I let down the jiu-jitsu community, and I created a monster that I couldn't control." Sounds a little dramatic to me, but he did mess up what should have been an amazing promotion in a lot of ways. But without him, we might not have the promotions we do today, so thanks, I guess. Either way, from start to finish, Metamoris was a wild ride. I hope you found the Metamoris story as interesting as I did. Doing research for this, I learned a lot more than I knew was happening at the time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.